Welcome everybody to Buddhism Talks. Today, I'm really excited to have a friend of mine named Shuyi on with me. We're going to talk about what happens when you start chanting and wake up to your true self and some secret dreams and end up having a 180 change in your career. So welcome, Shuyi, to Buddhism Talks.
Thank you so much, Lydia. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, me too.
We'll be here. Yeah.
One of the reasons that I wanted to have you on this podcast is because you've really lived your life as an incredibly strong Buddhist practitioner and also a great friend and somebody that I admire. So I thought we could have a really good time just talking about life and our practice, and particularly how you navigated your career and the challenges of having a career in the arts. So to start it off, I'd really love to hear about how you started practicing. What happened? Where were you at the time? You want to jump in with that?
Yeah, I'm good to jump in. Yeah, I encountered a practice back in 2013. I just want to say you're completely right. My life, if I look back, is completely divided in half of like before I encountered Buddhism and after, how exactly my life changed. You know, the places I was living in, the words that I was using every day as dialogue, you know, talking to people. So I guess a little background on that. I was born in China until like I was 12 years old, and then immigrated to Vancouver. And then, you know, that stereotypical being an immigrant child, you don't become an artist. Your parents suffered and struggled so much to bring you to a land of opportunity so you don't have to suffer. They just didn't realize that you would also choose to suffer. Life in the arts, and that doesn't make sense, right? Why would you do that to your parents? So I just always had this dream of being an actor, and I just never really pursued it because it just seemed very scary and is, you know, a pipe dream. Like, why would I even attempt it? And especially when I came here, I didn't even speak English. I didn't speak English till 99. So then I did the things. I did the, you know, good daughter things, the good child things. I went to UBC and I got a bachelor's degree in economics. Then I immediately went to Silicon Valley. I got a job there, and I did the thing there too. I did the good employee and things you're supposed to do there. I climbed a corporate ladder, you know, doubled my income in five years. I got promoted within 6 months, and then again, you know, a year or two or something, I got to management fairly quickly, and I climbed that ladder, I think, fairly quickly. By my late 20s, like, I looked around my company, I was like, I don't see myself climbing any higher, in the sense that any other jobs I would have would be kind of like a duplicate of the same. I just kind of understood, I guess, like the business part of it or the inner workings of things. And what I always tell people is that, like, climb the corporate ladder, and I'm like, what the hell is this view? I hate it. I hate it so much, but I've already climbed this ladder. Like, I got up here, like, I was,
You
how
did
do
the
I
work.
I
Yeah.
did the work, I got here, but what is this? And I really didn't like it. Even though my resume looked great, you know, everything on the outside looked really great, but I was just like really feeling depressed because my life wasn't in an area that I wanted. You know, I felt like I just picked a goal, any goal, and I just ran so hard and fast towards that direction that I didn't even look to see where I was running to. You know, it was just like, you're supposed to get a good education in something sensible, and you're supposed to work hard in your job. And I was successful, but then what? Like, for what? And that's when I remember.
Actually, can I just, were your parents happy at that point about it?
So happy.
Okay.
They were so happy. They're like, look at my daughter.
Yeah, this is why we came.
This is why we came to Canada. Look at the, you know, the
their dreams came true.
Their dreams were coming true. Yeah. They liked my job. They liked my boyfriend at the time. My parents loved it. Everything on the outside was good. They were so proud of me. My daughter got a promotion in 6 months. Oh, you got another promotion, another raise. And this was all during 2008, the economic downturn, a recession.
Wow.
When everybody was losing their jobs, I was just climbing up. And so they were so proud. And then suddenly, I remember talking to a coworker, and then she said she liked dancing. And I was like, oh, you like dancing? I like to act. Like, I remember whispering it to her, because I just felt like I can't, oh wow, I'm gonna cry. I can't say it out loud because it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I work in tech. I was a program manager in tech. I like to act. I was already 29.
Wow.
And being a woman, often in Hollywood, they say your acting career is over when you hit 30. We're not even 30, 25. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I just remember whispering to her, I'm like, I want to act. And then she said, oh, like, let me introduce you to my other friend who is a teaching artist, who's also an actor, but she's a teaching artist. So she makes a living as an artist. And I was like, what is that? Like, what do you mean? And so I remember I drove to San Francisco and then I met up with her friend and then she just started talking about all these Buddhist concepts that I didn't know were Buddhist concepts at the time. I remember she's told me, if you look at your life, where do you want to be 20 years from now? Where do you have to be in 10 years in order to be there in 20 years? Like how to project that forward. Okay, so that's where you need to be in 10 years. Where do you need to be in 2.5 years? Where do you need to be in a year, 6 months, 3 months, 2 weeks? What do you need to do right now to project that forward? Because life is bounded by the law of cause and effect. That's how it's possible. What do you need to do right now to project that forward so your life can lead you to the path where you want it to be in 20 years?
So she took you right to what's the cause you're going to make.
Yeah. What's the cause you're going to make right now?
Yeah. Wow.
And like, because in the beginning, it was this concept of like anything is possible. And I was like, okay, I've seen that slogan. So it's like some guy running down the street with a hoodie and like, you can just do, but like, what does that mean? And she's, that's how you set your destiny, is what you do right now. And I was, wow, that's just makes so much sense and logic and reason. And it felt that is something that I've believed in all my life. I've always believed that you can do anything as long as you put your mind to it. But what is that? And she said, that's Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And I was like, okay, but what is that? And she said, that's Buddhism. And I was like, that's Buddhism? Wow. Like this whole time that was Buddhism? I just couldn't believe it because also, I also have a different concept of Buddhism, right? When you think of Buddhism, you think of like Buddhist monks or, you know, people who don't eat meat or...
And the shrines and the incense and
the incense and the robes and the shaving the head
and
the offerings. Yeah. And also like growing up in China, like when we watch like, these dramas, it's always like, you know, if you have a bad relationship, after you break up, you become a nun. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like that's Buddhism. Yeah, exactly. That's Buddhism. Like, I mean, that's like
so bad you need to escape. That's Buddhism.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Buddhist version of, you know, when you go through a bad breakup, you dye your hair.
That's right.
Growing up, like a lot of the Chinese drama is like when you go through a really bad breakup, you shave your head, you join the nunnery, and you change your name, and you pretend you don't know your past lives anymore. In my mind, that was Buddhism.
Yeah.
But when she explained the cause and effect, I was like, that's Buddhism? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started chanting. And then I just remember on the drive back from like San Francisco back to like where I was living, I think it was Fremont at the time. I remember just like crying. I'm bawling and then saying to myself like, I'm a program manager, but that doesn't define me. I can be anything I want.
Yes,
and I just and then because I felt like, because I mean that's also like a lot of our society. When you meet somebody, immediately how you identify yourself is what do you do? Yeah. Well, I'm a program manager. And so that's who I am. And I remember because I was bawling so much. And then also where I was crossing, I think it was like the 92 bridge. And then I remember this green Toyota truck that was in front of me. And I was like, it's okay, just follow that truck. You don't have to worry about like where you're going. Like just follow that truck and you'll be fine. Because my mind was just elsewhere. And I was like, oh, I could be an artist. I am an artist because I say I am. And like from that moment, then just like something shifted in me. Something opened up and I felt a shift. And then I went to my first session at the Sunnyvale Culture Center. As soon as I walked in, people were chanting. I was like, this is so weird. What is hell's happening? When people were chanting like Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and I've never experienced that, and I was like, what is this? Yeah. But I was so desperate in my life and everything else made sense. And I was like, let's just figure it out. And so I started chanting with them. And then it was an introduction meeting and I asked all the questions. I did not hold back. And I was, why do you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo instead of saying, I want a big life? You know, I just remember there wasn't any shame or any guilt. I didn't feel like intimidated to ask the really skeptical questions. And then all these people were there like sharing their experiences about like, you can chant for anything you want. At that time, I wanted to chant to move to San Francisco because I was living in the South Bay and then like basically moved to the city. And I've been talking about it for like years. So I started chanting about that. Yeah, eventually I did get an apartment for like exactly the budget that I wanted, like they said. That's a different story. But that's how I started practicing Buddhism, was like secretly whispering to a coworker in a conference room that I want to act. Me wanting to be an actor was secret, but also not so secret. Like you know, in high school, I took drama classes. In university, even though my major was economics, I prioritized acting classes that I could take in university. So there was mini steps I've been taking already. And then when I lived in the Bay Area, I was already taking classes also at the American Conservatory Theater up in San Francisco. And I would drive the hour or however long it would take 3 times a week.
So you were making causes.
I was making causes. Yeah. I just didn't see where would it go, right? I couldn't see just me taking part-time classes. What would that do? It just fulfilled something inside of me, but I never dared to dream bigger than that.
I just think that's an important thing because causes are causes for Buddhists or
Yeah.
non-Buddhists, right?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
regular repetitive causes and efforts, like even if you don't think it's going to lead to anything, it's just so important to make them. They do create a direction and a change in your life, even if they look
Yeah.
like you're not doing anything. I just want to highlight that because sometimes people go, I'm not even going to bother. And I just want to remind everybody, just bother. Even if
Yes.
you don't think
Always
it's
bother.
going to directly lead to the big dream of your life, it's the regular, smaller causes that are still incredibly powerful. Because I think that's part of you getting to the moment where you could secretly say, I actually really want to act
Yeah.
because you had been and you'd been trying it and your life was expressing your love of it that whole period of time, right?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
encourage
Yeah.
everybody, make the little causes
The little causes, it doesn't need
along the
to be
way.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't need to be like I quit my job today and become an actor tomorrow. Take an
exactly.
acting class. It doesn't even need to be like a month commitment. Like take a drop in.
Yeah, exactly.
Very small. You might hate it.
Yep.
Also, like make causes. Like another analogy, I like just like planting seeds, not sprout, but they're growing roots.
Yeah.
This more often when we in Buddhism we say, you plant a seed, but then it feels like nothing is happening because you don't see anything above the surface.
Yeah.
But in Buddhism, we're encouraged because we know the law of cause and effect to keep on watering and nourishing that seed because it's growing roots and we can't see those roots. Even when the little sprout starts coming up ground, we still can't see those roots. But when those roots really like present is when obstacles and hardships happen, then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like this little sprout is so strong. Well, because you've been watering it and it's been growing underground. But often because we don't see the roots, we give up.
So then what happened?
So I want to say, the little seeds that I've been planting also was auditioning for grad school, like master in fine arts degrees, even though I know every school, they only accept like 12 to 18 people a year for those programs.
Was
And
that
I
true? I didn't know
never,
that. Really?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
fine arts
Every
is 12 to 18. So that's amazing, Shuyi. You were still taking actions.
I was still taking action, even though like I remember. So at that time when I was like, I want to act, I had already applied for grad school the year before,
Okay.
and I didn't get anywhere. Rejection, rejection, rejection. I didn't get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this, I was like, well, let me just apply again. But I was feeling so defeated. I didn't know where to apply to. Also, nobody in my world comes from that world. So I didn't even like have guidance of where to apply. So I remember that year, because also I was already 29. Like, who am I kidding?
Yeah.
So I only applied to Yale and NYU because those are the two that I recognized. The second year I prepared 4 monologues. And then I auditioned for Yale, auditioned for NYU, bombed all my auditions. It was so bad. I remember walking out of the audition room, there was 2 other schools that was like accepting drop-ins, like Columbia and Harvard. And so I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just do it. Because I have the monologues prepared, may as well do it more times. I did it at the Columbia audition, also bombed it. Harvard was like, oh, come back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock a.m. because we're full today. I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Because it takes like an hour to do hair and makeup before you go to those places too. And I still remember this moment, like walking out of the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco to my apartment, which was like 10 minutes away, and just so defeated. I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get up like 7 a.m. tomorrow to do this. And then I remember something that a member from a meetings told me. She said, Shuyi, life is like this. You wake up in the morning, your alarm rings. You either get up right away or you hit the snooze button. There's no right or wrong because maybe hitting that snooze button for the extra 10 minutes is really going to set you up for your day. You're going to be more refreshed if you hit snooze versus getting up right away. There is no right or wrong. But whatever you choose, your day is going to be different and then your week is going to be different. Right? Every decision matters. So you want to decide from a place of wisdom. Right? That's how life works. It's just these mini decisions. And you always want to like we said, plant a seed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna freaking plant a seed tomorrow. Whatever. I don't care. And so the next morning I got up, I did my makeup, I went to the Harvard audition. I was like, I'm here to do this. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't really like care. And then they asked me for a third monologue.
Wow.
And I did a third monologue. And then afterwards, they're like, okay, pull up a chair and like sit with us and talk with us. They're like, why do you want to be an actor? I don't remember what I said, but I cried. Didn't think anything of it. Then it was like March started rolling around and I started getting all these like rejection letters. But I've also been chanting consistently somewhat. Like I haven't understood the practice of chanting every day, but sometimes I would just like stare at a wall like a black dot and then chant a minute here and there. And also going to like meetings and chanting. And then I just remember when I chanted also, this is a tangent, but when I chanted, it was really one of those like eyes opening, like all these opportunities has been in front of me, but I just didn't see it before. Because also I was at a point where I just felt a little bit stuck in my job. Everywhere I move is going to be a different variation of the same thing. I just felt kind of stuck. And I remember, because I was chanting, I remember a guy from the adjacent team had quit. And then that had happened so many times because I've been working at this company for like 6-7 years at that point. I just never occurred to me I can go after their job as an opportunity for myself. And then also I had connected with one of my coworkers, then worked now for Google, and they were hiring, so I submitted my resume there. I just remember like within that week I had interview for this job that was kind of it was like diagonally up that way, so it wasn't like a straight promotion, but it was that way. I had interviewed for that job. I had got an interview at Google. I remember it was like a Monday at like 9:38 or something. My boss's boss messaged me. It's like, hey, if you're interested, let's move forward. So I got this promotion. I was great. I phoned and there was an email from Harvard. I was like, okay, great. Like another rejection email. And I opened it and I said, congratulations.
Wow.
And I just,
Wow.
like I froze. I called the guy that I was dating at the time and I was like, I got the job. He's like, congratulations. And I was like, I got accepted to Harvard. He's like, wow, okay. You know, like when they say things are possible and then you do it and then it happens.
Yeah, it's almost out of body. Like you
Yeah.
get out of body for a bit, right? Like just like, is this my life?
Well, yeah. And so long story short, I quit my job, bought a pair of snow boots, and then moved from California to Boston.
Wow.
And then I went through the acting program for 2.5 years. That was really tough. But I gained so much from it because I've always wanted full-time training. So that's why it's like, I want to go somewhere where everybody is really serious about this. Because everybody was like, there to be an actor.
What came out of that chanting, like at the depths of your life, you knew it was the right thing. I can't remember who said it to me, but would have been a Buddhist at some point. But they explained to me early on that deep in your life, there is a wisdom and that you know what you need to make you happy. And other people can give you advice and they can give you tips and they can give you suggestions, but you need to really access your own heart and do what's right for you. And I think that was kind of what happened with me when I started chanting, because I also had all these different options, like stay in England, maybe go work there. I could have ended up in Switzerland or something, but then I thought I have to chant to get out that wisdom and belief that my life itself knows what will make me happy. And sometimes our head doesn't know, but our life does. And I think that chanting helps us access that deeper wisdom because our life does know what's best for us ultimately, if you can tap into it,
like bring that from the subconscious to the conscious. It's okay to admit to this.
Exactly. And somehow the chanting taps in, like it really does. It's like you have a language for your own life, that responds. So that's just an amazing experience. I mean, I absolutely love that story, like to go from Silicon Valley, end up acting at Harvard in such a short period of time with all the reasons in the world to not do it, but at the same time knowing that your life really had to do it. Was there anything you want to say in general about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking back at one point when I first started chanting, I realized, yes, I've taken the safe route. I have a bachelor's degree in not economics and work for Silicon Valley. But the safe route just meant I was making decisions from a place of fear, right? Instead of courage and wisdom. That's what safe means. When I started chanting, I was like, okay, if that's what's been happening for my life, what does my life look like when I start making decisions from a place of courage and wisdom and compassion for myself and vitality, what we call Buddhahood? Like, what does that look like? And then that's when things shifted. 180, like in the beginning when I said my life is divided in half before and after chanting, because like after chanting, I was living in a different state. There was snow, but I also was using different words, right? I wasn't saying like corporate words of like, let's circle back on that, or like, let's go above and beyond. I was talking about like David Mamet plays, or like Neil LaBeouf, or like, these names who doesn't mean anything to me just months beforehand, but now all aspects of my life were different. And there were like certain tough times when I was in grad school and I was complaining, but I realized it was privileged complaining. Like, how lucky am I to complain about getting a master's degree in theater, like in the arts? It was just so incredible. That's the one thing that I recognized first and foremost, is I gotta start making decisions from a place of wisdom and courage and not fear, and chanting helps me do that.
It's amazing. And then you ended up in New York for a year, right? So do you
Yeah.
want to give us some highlights about what happened in New York and the value of New York?
Sure. Highlights. Let's go. New York is where I really solidified the foundation of my Buddhist practice because when I was in Boston, like when I first got introduced to this Buddhist practice, I just understood the kind of the general concept and I got a big benefit and I just flew to Boston and I didn't really practice. I just had an idea of it. And in New York, I understood, oh, this is the foundation of how you practice Buddhism and how you apply that philosophy to life and how you continue to overcome your obstacles and overcome your limitations of your mind and how you continue to strive forward in life. Like I really got that foundation. What we call three pillars: faith, practice, and study, chanting morning and night, to have a higher life condition. So I'm able to again make decisions from a place of like courage and wisdom instead of fear more easily. After I've chanted, really understood that. And then in New York, I was also just living as an actor in New York, auditioning for things, all the rejections as an actor, also like really struggling. 2 years prior, I was a program manager in the Silicon Valley, imagining how could this life be possible. And yet now I'm in New York, I'm auditioning. I didn't really get booked a lot, but I did have opportunity to like audition for Broadway and things like that. And like, what?
Yeah.
Right, like that's also really amazing. And friends of mine, like we put up a play that we performed in New York. We rehearsed that as well. Like it's just a completely original play that we broke down from newspaper articles and historical facts about how Asian people were treated historically up until now and things like
Wow.
that. And it was like part comedy, part avant-garde. We only performed it once, but it was a lot of fun. Like that was a great experience.
Well, still to audition in New York, to actually put on a play in New York City, unimaginable. So, and the other thing too, as I understand, in terms of establishing your practice, you also went to tons of Buddhist meetings. That's when you dived in terms of
Yeah.
connecting with SGI and doing Buddhist study and all of that, going to the center to chant, going to meetings, all of that kicked in New York, right?
Yes, yes. I used to practically live at the center. I used to just like leave my apartment, pack 4 sandwiches because I never knew when I was going to get hungry, and then just go to the center and just catch any meeting they had that day. If they had an intro meeting, I would go and support, and there was open chanting there, and there was like a basement place in the NYCC, New York Culture Center, where there's like, desks and like microwave and people just like, interacted. It was a great community and just like be a part of that. And then everybody's so encouraging. And there's so many artists in New York who are also Buddhists because I feel like we need this practice the most because we face so much rejection. It's so much rejection. How much ever rejection is like equal parts Buddhist practice to get you to keep on going.
I remember one of the leaders in the US gave a lecture to the artist division. It was Danny Nagashima, and the title of the lecture was Become People of Unlimited Self-Esteem. So, that's kind of the focus. Not everybody's going to win an Oscar. Not everyone's life is going to unroll exactly how they might have thought. However, the whole purpose is to become people of unlimited self-esteem, that you can access your self-worth in the midst of the rejections and create value artistically, creatively, until you die. Like once an artist, always an artist. And technically, according to Makaguchi, the first president, we're all creative. So that's
Yeah.
kind of our responsibility, is to keep staying creative, until the very end. But I love the idea of unlimited self-esteem, that there's no end to your sense of self-worth. There's no end to how much you can bring out a personal self-confidence and worth, so
Every time you get rejection, you keep on going back, chanting to like, oh wait, it's the self-esteem I can tap into is unlimited, but you keep on testing. I feel like you keep on, like that's where you really build your muscle too. Like those rejections really build so much muscle.
There's a quote in here from the Discussions on Youth book, and he's talking about self-confidence and self-confidence in our uniqueness. Like there's a famous writing from Nichiren Daishonin where he talks about the uniqueness of a cherry, plum, and damson flower, and he very clearly states one is not supposed to be the other. And the whole purpose of Buddhism is that we each shine in our own
Yeah.
unique way.
Yeah.
And as part of that, he says, with regard to self-confidence, Self-confidence comes from hard work and
Mm.
effort.
Yeah.
You're deluding yourself if you think that you can have self-confidence without it, which
Mm.
speaks to what you just said about building a muscle. Like, it's
Yeah.
a muscle that we build by working hard and making
Yeah.
efforts and taking action. And then he says, only those who strive to challenge a goal and work toward it at their own pace and in their own way, only those who keep trying, no matter how many times they fail, can develop unshakable confidence in themselves. Self confidence is synonymous with an invincible will.
Oh, wow.
And that is a muscle, like you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Building that
wow.
will.
Yeah.
And then he says, you cannot be said to have true self confidence if your opinion of yourself seesaws from high to low every time you compare yourself to others. A
Mm.
life spent judging yourself in terms of others will only end in frustration and deadlock. And I think when you're facing rejection and going to all these auditions, right? It's so natural to seesaw. You're up high
Yeah.
when you do it, and
Oh,
you
let me tell you, it's every day.
yeah,
Especially being an actor, like anywhere, not just New York, every day. Comparison, are you kidding me? You walk into waiting room, there's like, 5, 6 other people that look like you, but better.
yeah,
But prettier. You're like, all right.
yeah. So, but
Yeah.
when you build that muscle, you can free yourself of worrying about that. Just like be really
Mm-hmm.
confident in your own, in your own unique value, right? So,
Absolutely. But it's like a gradual, you know what I mean? You go through it and you're like, oh, wait a minute. You go through it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. And eventually you get to a point where that doesn't really bother you. You go in a waiting room and you still see the same people, but you're like, okay,
yeah, this is life. Yeah, and
yeah. She's cherry and plum and then blossom. You know what I mean? Like it's,
exactly,
or cherry
exactly.
plum and cherry, what is it? Cherry plum and
It's
damson. Yeah.
cherry, plum, peach, damson
Peach and
are the
damson.
four
Yeah.
different blooms. I went to a
Yeah.
lecture once on this at the Florida Center, and the person was talking about how each one of them in some ways seems similar. He goes, but they're actually very different, right? The cherry
Mm.
blossom, like if you see them as blossoms, you kind of think, well, yeah, it's just a fruit blossom, right? But he's
Yeah.
like, actually, they bloom at very different times. They
Mm-hmm.
do look different. They have unique properties. So even things that look the same on the surface still have different rhythms, different purposes. And so it's a really great metaphor, that we need to bloom in our own way. And that's why Daisaku Kid always says, practice in a way that is true to yourself. He's
Yeah.
always adding that. In so many lectures I've seen, he's always adding practice in a way that is true to yourself. Like, don't lose yourself, be
Yeah.
more yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so New York was really like strengthening your life, strengthening your practice.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, there was a pivotal shift, wasn't there? Right? Because you
Yes.
got really great guidance, from what I understand, from somebody.
Yeah. Sorry, I want to go back to the play a little bit because I
Oh,
know
sure.
it is a big accomplishment, but I really don't feel like it was. Like because it's like a downtown theater. Like I don't want to play it up. I personally feel fraudulent almost, like hyping up that experience because it was just like, it was like you know what I mean? Does no?
But no, it was
Oh, okay, okay.
you put on a play in your city. I don't give a shit. It was if it was somebody's basement. Like, did people pay to get in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Were there was there an audience?
Yes.
Okay.
We were
All right.
close to sold out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You promoted it. You
Yeah,
rehearsed.
we promoted it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got applause at the end of it.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. And it was in an actual building in New York City.
Yes.
It wasn't in your bedroom, right? No. Okay. So it was a play
Yeah, it was a
you
play.
put on in New York City.
Yes, we did.
That had tickets, and it had a
Yes.
promotional poster,
Yes, it
and
did.
it had an audience that clapped.
Yeah, we
So
rehearsed for months.
there we go. So
Okay.
this is the karma that you are in the middle of changing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You got to stop the downplaying. I didn't do anything in New York City, let alone put on a play. So,
Okay.
so for all those people who've never put on a play in New York City, It is impressive and inspiring. Yeah. So
You're right. We had to schedule rehearsal spaces. There was a whole calendar, and we cast it.
yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. Okay. Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. Like I said, if you told me right now, oh, sorry, lady, I did it in my bedroom, then I go, yeah, maybe Shuyi, maybe we overdid it, you know? But I don't, but no
You're
fraud
right.
there.
You're right.
Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
no. Yeah. What I'm saying is like, oh, it was downtown instead of midtown. Okay. Yeah. No, I get it.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
God. Is that what you're saying? You were saying it was, oh, wow. Wow. This is cool. So you are trying to downplay it by saying it wasn't Midtown. It was downtown. So
It was downtown.
therefore,
It was one night. Yeah.
yeah.
It
So
was one night,
therefore
but we
shouldn't-
rehearsed for months.
Therefore, it's no achievement because it wasn't in Midtown at like
It was a
again,
couple of streets down.
yeah. Yeah, and now all of a sudden it's not worth mentioning. So anyway,
Even though it was so much effort, like we rehearsed for months, and it wasn't even like a written play. We devised it from like again like all these historical data and research and whatever. And anyway, you're right. No, I shall recognize.
that's right. So then at the very end of that, right? So then at the end of that, as I understand, you were trying to figure out what to do next, right? And then you had some great advice given to you about how to
Yes.
chant, and that led to another
Yeah.
shift, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So then my visa was only a year because I'm Canadian. And then towards the end of the year, I was chanting to stay in New York. I'm like, I'm going to stay in New York, stay in New York, stay in New York. But then in this practice, we also talk about like making causes, right? You can't just chant, right? Just like you can't chant to pass an exam, you have to study. So I went and talked to all the lawyers. I went and like researched all the immigration laws, and I went to a young women's leader. She came to home visit me, and I just said like, look, I did all the research. There's no way I can stay in New York. Like there's just no legal way. I'm chanting, I'm doing the things, but like my mind cannot fathom a way. And then she's like, well, you've always had your mind, you know, as a strategy. If you're strategizing your mind, you may as well not practice, because if you always had your mind, right? You've always had the strategy of your mind, but now you have to practice. It's time to use the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. And I was like, what is that? And she said, you know, the strategy of the Lotus Sutra is, maybe you can explain it more, but better. But the strategy of the Lotus Sutra is profoundly understanding the mystic law of cause and effect. That every time you make a cause, you know, the effect is embedded at the same time. So just keep on making causes in life. And she shared her personal experience of how she's able to overcome things in her life, just like really having faith in that.
I mean, I think the part that's missing in the explanation is that it means to chant rather than think. Right? It means to sit down and actually say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with an openness to see what comes out of your life and in your heart, rather than overriding everything with your intellectual mind. And your intellectual mind has a karmic bias. Your karmic mind is kind of what got you to this place in life. So you want to be able to go beyond the karmic mind, and for that you need to generate deep wisdom and a different kind of power. And it, you know, so when I'm using the strategy of the Lotus Sutra, it means like rather than just reading books or listening to podcasts and webinars, I'm chanting to see what my own wisdom and my own Buddhahood is trying to tell me. So that's what the strategy of the Lotus Sutra is.
And also like setting your mind aside. So there's like practically what that means is that like, say like I'm chanting to stay in New York, but when I'm chanting, like do all the research. When you're not chanting, do all the things, but when you're chanting, don't strategize on how you're going to do it.
Exactly.
Right? So let go. You know, let go and just chanting and keep making causes and keep doing the things that you're doing. Even if it seems there's like a deadlock, keep doing things and keep chanting. And when you chant, again, not strategizing on how it's going to happen. So that's the way that I was chanting. There was an audition that came through that for a play like in Boston. And I was like, well, I'll do it. You know, because I've been chanting. I was like, just make a cause. And so I went back to Boston, audition, got that part. Long story short, they put me up in Boston. I was rehearsing in Boston, and I put up a play in Boston. Like for the first time, I was hired as a professional actor, a theater actor, getting a paycheck
Another milestone.
every week. I know, but like the paycheck was so tiny. But I was just like, I remember looking at it. I'm like, Shuyi Jia, the actor, and then like the amount, which was so little. I'm getting paid as an actor. And then I was still chanting to stay in New York, and then I was like, wait a minute. I'm in Boston. I'm having like the best time in my life, and I'm not even in New York. I'm in Boston. Why am I chanting to stay in New York? That doesn't make sense. And I was like, oh, what I really want is to be in a place where I can like act and then be able to get any job I want, because my visa restrictions, I couldn't get any job I wanted. It has to be in acting to make money, and that's just so much pressure. And so I was like, oh, that's what I want. Then immediately I'm like, oh, then Toronto.
Yeah.
Because I'm also theater trained, and Toronto has more
You have theaters. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, more theater than Vancouver. So I was like, oh, Toronto. It just became so clear. Like, literally, it became so clear. I was like, because like I'm also a Canadian citizen. And then when it became clear, I went back to New York. I think it's like within 6 weeks of like that becoming clear to me, my stuff was in a van and I was driving here.
Yeah.
And my roommate in New York just freaked out. She was like, people talk about moving all the time and they don't move for like years on end, but you're just going. She just kept on saying, you're just going. She couldn't believe it. Because like literally within 6 weeks of like, I think I'm going to move to Toronto, I moved to Toronto.
Yeah. Well, it's like, because when you know, right? Just like when I was in England and I didn't know where I wanted to be, and my choices were stay in England, get a job. There's a chance that Mark had to go to Switzerland, come back to Canada. There was all these choices and I had no idea. And then as I chanted, it just became crystal clear. And in 3 weeks, everything went from complete fog, complete blur, to I'm enrolled in a 4-year Bachelor of Commerce program at U of T in 3 weeks on the last flight. So there's moments in our life when things just become so clear. And then once we decide, it's fast. There's no need to hesitate. There's no need to wait and ponder. It's just done deal, move, just go. So, so then you got here and you've been here for 8 years now.
That was, 2017,
2017. And so you lived through COVID here, you settled here.
Okay.
Did you want to say a few words about what happened in the early days in Toronto? And then I know there's one pivotal shift, and then where you are at now.
There's so many shifts in Toronto. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely in Toronto, many more injections and struggle. One thing that was great, it started out great because like, I love being back in Canada. And it started off great because I connected to the local district of Buddhist practice right away. And then right away I was chanting with people. And then right away I was like, now I'm here in my own country. I can get any job I want. I chanted with a member for a job. And then I was like, this is amazing. And then right after our chanting, we went across the street to go get some dessert. And then for some reason, I just asked the waitress, I'm like, hey, are you guys hiring? She's like, yes, we are. And then she handed me the application right after she gave us our bill. And I submitted the application. The manager came out to talk to me 5 minutes later. And then I had a job. I started working there like 2 days after. It was, right across the street. So I got that job right away. But there was also like a lot of struggle because obviously finances were just gone. Harvard was expensive. Like I'm still in debt. But for the first year, I moved like 10 times in Toronto. I just kept on like needing to move from like sublets or bad landlords or situations. I was settling on my living condition. There was definitely the finance part of it, but there was also like the mentality of I can just like slum it for a while. The mentality of I don't deserve the good stuff yet.
Yeah.
I don't deserve because that's expensive and I can't afford that. So therefore I don't deserve that yet. And I was like, oh, that's bad. I got to shift that, right? Because in our Buddhist practice, we have like no rules, but the number one rule is not to slander your life. And I was slandering my life and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was being like, practical.
I think that I think that perspective can come through as sometimes you think, oh, it's okay. I can handle this. It's okay. I don't need a safe apartment to live in. I'm fine. Other people can have safe apartments, but I don't need one. My life doesn't need that. And so you are like completely lowering the standards for your life internally in terms of your view of who you are and what you should put up with. In your situation, it was apartments where you were accepting all these different living conditions and scenarios and you're thinking it was okay. I think that experience just led to those shifts in how you viewed yourself.
Absolutely. And later on I was like, oh, I do deserve more. I deserve like a peaceful home. So I chanted for that. And what I did is that I almost doubled my budget for like rent because I was like, I deserve that for myself. And then again, my friends from the Buddhist practice helped me find an apartment that was like a studio basement apartment that was just so lovely. And I lived there for like a couple years. And I was just, like, I really had a safe space to come back to chant, it's just really important to have a peaceful home. And I really profoundly realized that.
Yeah.
And then when I got that apartment and then continued struggles in other ways, like long story short, I also realized the way that I was thinking about my living space, I was thinking that about health, because again, financially struggling, and I was like, oh, like maybe I'll just skip meals or something to save money because intermittent fasting is a thing, right? But like that's not really the story I'm telling myself, right? So it just got to a head where I had to realize that for that area of my life.
The thing out of this is that we have to be really careful with the stories we tell ourselves, because sometimes we tell ourselves stories that keep us in situations that aren't really healthy. I think that's kind of a lesson out of all of that. And then
when
and then I just want to get to the big shift, because I mean, I knew you during that period of time. I know there was like severe financial concerns, and you were like fighting through the whole time. At the same time, you were really active with Buddhist activities. You were one of the key people hosting lectures at the university, like, on Buddhism for students. Through that whole time of struggle, I think you maintained a movement, energy, a joy, creativity. Like, you didn't stop. Even on the surface, you mentioned with the planting seeds, it didn't look like anything had quite grown, but the roots were just getting bigger and stronger and deeper until there was that one pivotal shift with the one job that you did get. And I'd love for you to talk about how you ended up in this different environment and how that also opened up acting possibilities as well. Like, the two seem to have happened at the same time.
Yeah, it's really funny because you tied that for me later. I didn't even tie that dot.
Yeah.
But it's really funny that other people, how they see your life, they're like, oh yeah, that's right. Like the downtown play in Toronto, because of, again, all the rejection, I started doing like improv and like sketch comedy just to get on stage and experience. I found a voice in writing. I chanted one day, and then like, for some reason I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu because there was a place that was free for a while. For some reason that day, after I chanted, you need to also exercise, move your body for your mental health. I did that. And then, like you said, I did do a lot of activities for University of Toronto, the seminars there. And it was really funny because there was a bunch of us that were involved in that, but I was the most active because I was the only one that was unemployed. Yeah. And then the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, I lost like all my side gigs. I realized I can't plan anymore because my whole singular goal was to become a successful actress. But when the pandemic happened, I'm like, well, I can't plan anything for my life because what is this? What is that? And so I just chanted in front of the Hong Kong and be like, okay, I don't know shit. And I'm going to chant to just align myself with like my life with Kozen Rufu, to my mission in life, whatever that is. And again, I'm going to give it up. I don't know what it is anymore. I thought it was acting, whatever. I was like, okay, I'm open. I get it. Right? Like, okay. So you really use the 3 pillars of faith, practice, and study in the Buddhist practice, and just really took a leap of faith. It's just all going to work out. And then I remember in Canada we got like $2,000 a month, which helped me a lot. And then when that ended, I got an email from a place that I interviewed at 7 months prior that I didn't even remember. It said, hey, if it's not too late, we would love for you to join the team as VFX coordinator. I did not remember what that was. I did not remember what the job was, but because I was chanting a lot, it felt right. So I just jumped and I said yes. And I knew it was a production job. And you remember I didn't want anything in production other than actor. And then Mark, your husband, kept on telling me, stay open. And I was like, no, this is what I want. But then I said yes to the job. And then I had to ask for him, like, what does VFX stand for? It was a VFX coordinator for Star Trek Discovery. Amazing. And I was like, what? Like, what? It was so incredible. And at that job, I realized all the years, the decade that I spent in business operations that I lamented before, like, why didn't I do acting earlier? Why did I spend a decade of my life, or close to a decade of my life, in business operations? I realized all of that skills helped me land this job.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
All of that to help me land this job, help me do at this job, help me do a good job at this like new career that I found with myself. And then when I got to the job, I was like, oh, I'm also learning more about acting because I'm now getting to be on set. A tier 1 show, I get to see what the actors do between action and cut, and between cut and action. What do they do when they mess up a line? How do they interact with the ADs? How do ADs are assistant directors? How do they interact with the directors? How they, how each department work together. I got to be in production calls to figure out this is how like the whole thing is made. And then I realized when I was chanting so narrow to just being an actor, like my dream was too small. right? And again, when you open it up, you just, oh, like I meant to do something bigger. In that job, I really understood so much more about the industry than I ever did just getting auditions and getting rejected as an actor.
Well, I think too,
Yeah.
like listening to you talk now, I'm thinking about how much would somebody pay for that kind of an education to actually learn how film is really done. That is worth a lot of money. And instead,
Yeah.
you are getting paid a lot of money
To do
to
it.
learn all
Yeah.
that, you know? It's like there's so
Yeah.
many angles to the benefit of that job. And because your training was in theater, it wasn't in filmmaking.
But I did have training in business operations, and that's one
Yes.
thing I said in my interview for this job, because I know many people interview for the job as well, and I was the one that got it, right?
Yeah.
So in that interview, I remember saying, listen, I work in business operations. That means I jump and hop into different industries that I don't understand, and I pick up things quickly. I just need to understand the top layer of all the jargon, but underneath it all is still a business, and that is what I understand.
Yeah.
I was able to pick up things very quickly as well because of that experience. And for years, Lydia, I was like, I had like regretted, why did I have, why was I in business operations for so long when I needed this, artistic thing? But looking back, that all lined up
Yeah.
so well,
Well, and that's the thing, we always say like there's no waste in chanting, and it's like when your life kind of goes into this bigger flow, your past becomes valuable. Like all the things that you thought were a waste of time suddenly become useful in the direction of that flow of your life. That was just so amazing. And I remember you at that time going, I can't believe my life. You're going to work and you're surrounded by aliens and spaceships and cool people.
Yeah.
And
And also like aliens doing normal things, like aliens just on their phones, because during setups, aliens on their phones, or aliens just eating a sandwich. And just passing by, it's like, hey, how's it going? Well, cool. And they're blue.
yeah.
Or green or whatever color. Yeah.
Exactly. And the main thing is like sometimes we really limit what will make us happy. And who would have known that you could have experienced so much joy and so much development in a job that you couldn't have come up with in your head?
I didn't even know a job like that existed.
Yeah.
And that's why it brings back to like when you're chanting, you really cannot strategize with your mind because your mind is so limited.
Exactly.
I didn't know what VFX stood for, and yet I got a job as VFX coordinator. Like if I didn't like give it up to the Gongzang,
Yeah.
that's a weird way to say it. But like I wouldn't have like been able to even get this job. Yeah. Oh, and also like when you're saying like no effort is wasted. When I was talking about like randomly I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there was like a woman that I met there that like we became good friends, and she's the one that submitted my resume for this job.
Wow.
Like that's how.
So again,
That.
this constant theme for this podcast is continue to keep making causes, right? And back them up with some chanting, and you don't know which cause on which day is going to help redirect that flow of your life, right? It's amazing. So so do you want to move to where things are at now and doing lately and where you want to be going?
Yeah, sure. So I've left the production job. Now I work for virtual production, which is kind of splitting hairs. There's a lot of new opportunities in that space that I'm excited about. I left that job in production because I felt like in that position, I learned everything I could. I wanted to learn more, and I didn't know how to get that opportunity. So I made a decision to leave production, and now I work for a virtual production company. What I'm trying to figure out, because currently in life, I feel a little bit directionless. I don't know where I'm supposed to go, but that's also okay because again, like that's happened before, and look at what things transpired. So I am both confused and excited.
That's the best part.
Yeah, it is the best part. I'm both confused and excited, and I feel like there's still a lot of rejection in acting. That's been a through line, but I feel at this moment I also like need to demand more in my life. And this has been happening for maybe the past couple weeks. I feel like I'm not using the full extent of this practice. I feel like, and I don't know when it started happening, but at a certain point, I feel like I'm definitely chanting and setting goals, but also a certain part of me is chanting to accept it versus changing it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? And so I feel like that's what I've been doing because of, again, maybe decisions from fear instead of courage and wisdom again, right? Like
we go into layers, like we go into deeper and deeper layers.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just want to mention, when you had the job working on Star Trek, that I think the year after you booked the most acting gigs. also not
Oh yeah,
than
that's
you
right.
ever had. You said you auditioned and booked the most acting gigs then in 1 year than you did in 10 years.
That's right. That's right. That
Like,
one
that
year I booked
opened up
three
too.
commercials.
That was to me the
Yeah.
very cool thing. Like, who knew that could
Yeah.
have.
That one year I booked three commercials, and then the previous time it took me to book three commercials was at a span of 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And now, I mean, recently saw you do a comedy sketch at a theater downtown, not in your bedroom.
People also bought tickets for that. There was also
They did. There
marketing.
was an audience. Yeah.
Yes, there was an
It was
audience. Yeah,
real.
yeah.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah, it was real.
Yeah,
It happened.
and
She was there.
and you did a phenomenal job. I mean,
Thank you.
you really shone on stage. It was an absolute pleasure. Everyone laughed their heads off,
Thank
and it
you.
was just such a joy and honor
Yeah.
for me to watch you in that room. Like, just watching you, I'm like, I don't know what's around the corner for you, but I am absolutely confident in your life. I'm absolutely confident in every phase because I've seen so much wonderful stuff. And I think what you just said about you don't know, but you're excited. And it reminds me
Yeah.
of in the stress and anxiety podcast, there was a neuroscience article that talked about how if we can take that sense of the unknown, the stress of the unknown, and we can really bring out our curiosity in that moment, we we change the stress to an invitation. And so I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's like you
Yeah.
don't know, like there is change, there is uncertainty, but if you can get excited, then you are lighting up two different parts of your brain. You're not lighting up the fear primitive part of your brain, the amygdala. You're lighting up these two other things. And the cool part is the parts that get lit up, like the one part is responsible for imagination and vision, and the other part is responsible for goal setting and action. So when we're
Mm-hmm.
chanting, we're also lighting up those two parts because we're setting goals. And then after that, we're taking action. And it's lighting up the parts of our brain that we need to create new things or new eras in our life.
There's two things I want to say. I've been really grateful to have like met a group of like comedians like in improv and also like sketch comedy.
Yeah.
Like all those people that you saw at the show. Like I only wrote like one sketch for that whole show. Like all those group of people were just so amazing and inspiring, and I love writing with them. I actually last year, at the encouragement of these same people, submitted a writings packet to the show. Like, this hour has 22 minutes, and I got a response. They're not gonna hire me. But it's such a good rejection because I'm so used to like getting ghosted. But in the response, they said that we liked your writing, but unfortunately, we're not hiring any writers. But keep writing, and if anything opens up, but that's just like such a great encouragement. In that rejection is so much encouragement that just made my day. That rejection letter really, truly made my day. And I'm going to continue to submit and continue to, again, planting seeds, and I don't know where it's gonna go, but in writing I'm really developing a voice as well, so maybe there's something there. I don't know. I'm gonna, again, give it up to the gods on, and and keep on planting seeds. And then the second part, when I say that I'm still not using the full extent of this practice and I still want to deepen my faith, and it's really funny because you mentioned anxiety. When I imagine, like, I get anxious about like imagining myself being happy, because if I'm just happy, where's my anxiety gonna go? Like, I get anxious about not being anxious because I can't picture a life where I'm not just anxious about stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's that about? Right? Because I feel like intellectually we know about all these like profound things and concepts, but sometimes in our heart we don't know, right? Because when am I anxious about not feeling anxious, or in the future about being happy? And so I feel like chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is one way to really connect with these concepts that in your mind to your heart.
Yeah.
So then eventually I don't have to be anxious about where my anxiety is going to go if I'm just happy.
No.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that energy will go somewhere else. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's part of you talked about the move from the head to the heart. It can be a long journey, but it can also be a shorter one. And I think that the chanting shortens that journey from the head to the heart, where you really feel it, right? And and build that new painting. Like, one of my favorite writings, actually, that really inspired me to move to Italy after my career. And in that writing, it talks about the heart being a skilled painter. and that
Mm-hmm.
we build a painting of our lives and our future in our heart. And that's all we need to keep doing, is like fine tuning that painting, and then watch all the different versions that come out in the different phases of our lives. And you'd also mentioned on another occasion that, sometimes our dreams and our goals change. And that's important too. That's like growth and evolution. And
Mm-hmm.
well, and I'm excited to see what painting you create for the next
Mm-hmm.
phase.
Change and also evolve and expand.
Expand.
Always for the better, not change. Our dreams don't change because you give up on the previous dream. Our dream evolve because you've built up so much muscle that you understand yourself more, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, let's evolve. Like your dreams automatically evolve, and you're not giving up a previous dream.
It's
It's
different.
because you know that this is actually better for you, not because there was too much rejection in the other one, but because from the rejection you built more muscle and you can see better and you have a clear vision, and so you have like bigger dreams that might be different, but they're definitely better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Shuyi. Before we go, I just want to read one last quote from an essay that we both love. And it's all about living a creative life. And, because you agreed to do this podcast, I got the opportunity to bring out this book and some other ones. So I'm so
Mm.
grateful that you agreed to do this, because I wouldn't have pulled these books out and re-inspired myself. So I just want to read one section of the essay, and it's a section that's not always read. The part about creativity being about opening up your own life, and it being like a groaning door and opening up to the universe. That's the famous quote. It's been read in a
Okay.
different podcast. But I want to read another section because this is well wishes from Daisaku Ikeda to everybody. And he says, as you meet various trials and difficulties, thus polishing all the many facets of the jewel that is life, you will learn to walk that supreme pathway of humanity. Of this, I am confident. And I'm confident too that those who embrace life's native creativity now stand and will continue to stand in the vanguard of history. Bringing the creativity of life to its fullest flowering is the work of human revolution. Carrying out this kind of human revolution is your mission now, as it will be throughout your lives. So that's for both of us.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for spending this time with me. And is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yes, I want to say thank you, Lydia. Oh my goodness, you've made such a profound impact in my life, and I'm so glad. You always have so much like wisdom and guidance every time I go to you. And both you and Mark. I'm just so grateful that you're doing this podcast, and I listen to every episode. I love all of it.
Oh,
I am a long time listener, first time caller. And I'm just so happy that for you to have me on so we can talk about my life, and even through this journey of us
exactly.
talking through this podcast, I've also like learned a lot
Yeah, me
from
too.
just your encouragement.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Me
and
too. Like there's so many things, like when the podcast ends, I'm like, okay, remember that and go do that. And, so it's been super inspiring,
yeah.
and
Or just the things you say, like the comments that you make about like bits and parts of my life. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, yeah, like that. Okay, yeah, like I'm just there's a lot of learnings for me every time I talk to you. So
oh,
I'm just
thank
super
you. Thank
grateful that
you.
you're in my life.
Yeah. Well, it's
Thank you,
mutual. Same
Lydia.
thing. Like I always get super inspired with you and your life, and every victory I always celebrate profoundly and joyfully with you. So thank you so much. And we're
Thank
going to
you.
wrap it up. Thank you everybody for listening, and have a great week ahead, and we'll see you next time.